Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got another update when it comes to Alberta and their separation movement from Canada. Their premier, Danielle Smith, has come out and said that the Equalization Act is not fair. The amount of subsidies that they give, specifically Quebec, is completely out of control. The amount of natural resources, their population in terms of how wealthy they are relative to the resources, they are extremely, extremely rich in comparison to some of the other provinces, and that's why they have the Equalization Act. But they've been giving a ton of money to Quebec, only for Quebec to vote against their best wishes when it comes to general Canadian federal elections. They're more conservative. They voted for Poilievre by around 30 points. And for the fourth straight time, the Liberal Party won. And so Smith says that Canada shouldn't subsidize provinces like BC, Ontario, and Quebec, claiming equalization was never meant for this and must end. A lot of people in the comments said, well, BC is a net contributor to the equalization, and from what I've seen, the numbers, they are correct. BC is a net contributor, but the point is, especially when it comes to Quebec, this doesn't surprise me because this is based off of leverage, and this is why I compare it to Greater Idaho. You're probably not going to have a referendum that reaches the percent needed, which is around 54, 55%, although it's vague within the Clarity Act, but it's around 54 or 55% to really get moving on seceding. And what does that look like? Does it look like just leaving and becoming your own country with an economic relationship with the United States to where they protect you militarily? Does it look like eventually joining the United States as a territory and then as a state, or just staying fully independent from Canada and the United States? I don't know what it would look like, but I don't think they're going to get the referendum numbers. They would have to get, again, probably 54, 55%. There's some vagueness there in terms of how the Clarity Act works, but it's more than a simple majority, which is around 51%. It's not just about having a referendum to leave, it's also about the idea that, well, they get screwed through equalization and maybe they can give themselves a better setup when it comes to them threatening to secede and the Canadian government being like, well, we cannot have that happen because of the amount of natural resources that Alberta has. We will make a deal with you guys. We will change the carbon tax. We'll eliminate it. We will deregulate. We will potentially end equalization or change it to a degree that doesn't involve the major provinces. You can see, just look at the amount of oil that Alberta has. It's virtually the entire province outlined in black, just the amount of oil deposits. It is crazy. And then you also do have down here, the other thing I wanted to talk about, you can see Alberta contributing around $245 billion. Also, BC's positive, Ontario's positive, but then you've got Quebec, Nova Scotia, Manitoba, but a lot of these are eastern, outside of Manitoba, a lot of these are eastern provinces. New Brunswick, Newfoundland, these are all, eastern areas. So this is the point right here when you look at something like this, and this is why I say it's leverage, because it's like, well, maybe we won't be able to leave if we don't have the necessary votes in a referendum. But again, even the referendum depends a lot on Trump and also Canadians, but specifically, can Trump offer the people of Alberta something to where he can maybe coax the referendum to like 55, 56%? You have to be able to negotiate to potentially get the referendum there, or would Trump just stay out of it until the referendum happens, and then if they get 54, 55%, or 60%, whatever it is, then Trump would talk to them. There's the idea of Trump already offering Canada just the entire country, which, again, does not make sense for the United States, especially from a conservative perspective, but offering Canada some incentives that would potentially entice them when it comes to actually committing to secession from Canada. So that's kind of the curveball in all of this, is Trump and where his head's at when it comes to this. I don't know if he would talk about it before the referendum happens or what, but just based off of how aggressive Trump seems to be about this type of stuff, it wouldn't surprise me if he did mention it. And the other thing with Canada that's interesting is, you hear these rumors and murmurs, and I was hearing a lot about the CCP and in communist China possibly paying a lot of money to make sure Mark Carney won, or investing a lot in the hopes that Carney wins. And you can understand, well, Carney's a globalist, so it would make sense. But it seems like there is a serious relationship bubbling between Canada and China. And that's another thing that if you're Trump, if you could get Alberta with all the natural resources out from potential Chinese influence. I mean, there's only so much that China can really do when you're talking about Canada. The amount of influence you can have over them, it's very limited because of where Canada is located. The US would never allow it. But it is interesting, you hear these rumors about China and Canada possibly being closer than people think, and there being a little bit of manipulation when it comes to the election, and China for sure wanting Polyev to lose and the liberals to remain in power there. So that's another thing. And I know Trump is meeting with Carney like right now. So that'll be a big meeting. That's not going to be, I don't think, going to have to do with Trump wanting all of Canada or wanting Alberta. It's more so about the trade situation, and we'll see if we come to a new trade agreement with Canada. But the general thought is I'm not too surprised that the conversation is shifting to this. This is leverage when it comes to Alberta, they're saying. And really, it's like a double whammy. You're forced to give up money. You're already facing the carbon taxes and the overregulation in terms of resource extraction within your own province. So you extract them, and then because of the amount of resources you have relative to your population, you have to give a bunch of money to liberal provinces that have more people in them, and they vote against you in the general Canadian elections. So it's like a quadruple whammy. You are hampered in terms of your resource extraction because of overregulation, and then on top of that, when you do extract it, because your population is a little bit smaller compared to Quebec, you've got to give up all this money. You've got a more wealthy population in terms of the amount of taxes. You've got to give all of it up. And then those people, to where there's more of them, Quebec outnumbers Alberta by a ton. They just vote liberal. So it's like, what are we really doing here? And you can understand them saying, well, now we've got some leverage here. We have people that may want to leave. And if they had a referendum to where they got 55%, now you're seriously talking about leverage in terms of, well, they might actually leave at that point because they would have technically the numbers, although you would talk about negotiations with the Canadian government. Again, all of this depends on where Trump's head is at. If Trump says, well, we want to recognize Alberta as independent, what can Canada really do at that point? And that's not even Trump being this crazy, ooh, I'm going to take everything over, I'm imperialist. It is Trump just saying the people voted to be independent, so I'm going to recognize that. And if the United States recognizes it based off of our military size, do you think Canada really can do anything about it? So, that's another thing to think about. But just in general, if they got 55% or 60% or even 53%, that would give them some more serious leverage in terms of potentially getting out from under the ridiculous payments. They said when it comes to the smaller provinces, that's fine. We're willing to pay to keep them afloat. But like Quebec, the amount of money that Alberta gives them, it becomes a problem, especially when you're talking about Quebec voting ridiculously liberal. And Alberta is getting tired of it. 4 straight liberal governments. They're not happy about it. Especially when it comes to Carney coming in like 2 months ago, having a month of rallies, like had 2 rallies and then he wins. Especially when you're coming into this year, Polyev was sitting at like a 90% chance to win. When you look at the betting, there's going to be some anger. That's why I said before the election, if Carney wins, even if it's minority, which it was, there is going to be serious anger within Alberta, and there will be the movement, because it was already bubbling up before. There just wasn't a lot of momentum for it because people thought, well, if Polyev wins, I said, there's no way they would try and secede. They finally got a conservative government. Even if it was minority conservative, still they wouldn't do it. But now, because of the current situation, and also I think Carney's probably going to be a train wreck. They may have an election within a year or 2 years. He's not very popular within Canada. Now we'll see how well he does, but to me, it's there's going to be a lot of a narrative when it comes to Carney and his relationship with China and his relationship with the UK, heading the Bank of England in his past. So we'll have to see. But either way, guys, when it comes to Alberta separation, to me, we'll see if Trump makes a statement on it. It would be big if he did, because he could certainly really change things in terms of the amount of leverage that Alberta has if he came out and supported this. He's kind of trolled with the whole idea of all of Canada. People say it was just a troll, and honestly, you don't really know with Trump. You would hope it would be a troll, because the United States adding all of Canada would be very, very ill-advised when it comes to the voting of the Canadians, and they would probably be, I would imagine they would become a state, or they'd have to be split up into different states. It wouldn't make sense for all of Canada to be a single state. But if they were, it would be 100% liberal. And so that's a problem that you really can't get over. And that's why it can't happen. But Alberta specifically, even if you want to say, well, Alberta's a swing state, still that would make sense because of the amount of natural resources they have to add them. And again, they probably get added as a territory for the first 4 or 5 years anyways. But that's just the current situation when it comes to Alberta. And guys, make sure you like this video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.